we've got about not a ton of time left. So I would really encourage people to keep these conversations going. I will compile resources. I am putting things into a document that I will share out with everybody. If we have a couple questions, if people want to use the raise hand feature, just because we have a lot of folks in here and I don't want people to like awkwardly talk over each other. If anyone has questions that they want to ask to one or both of our speakers, I have questions, but I would like to defer to other folks. Okay, well, if no one has questions ready to go, let me just make sure no one had something in the chat because I always feel a little bit rude. Michelle, take it away.
Hi, thank you so much for these wonderful talks. This gave me a lot to think about in planning for this fall, especially. I teach mainly middle school right now, but also sometimes high school. One of the things that I'm beginning of the year practices, kind of intersecting with both of your talks actually. I have students, you know, like I'm already getting emails from parents saying that their kids are, you know, stressed out, crying, they don't want to come back because they don't want to bring a disease home. So with the understanding that we may go back, what do you think is the best way to kind of situate your students, maybe no matter the age, in terms of introductions and getting to know them, and then also classroom procedures without exacerbating their anxiety in this environment?
Great, thanks, Michelle. Danny or Vanessa, do you all have some thoughts?
The audio actually caught out a little bit, so I just missed like the last part of it.
I think just because I think it sounds windy where you are, Michelle. But yeah, so I think it was mostly about ways to help students and minimize kind of the anxiety that I think a lot of students, and to be fair, teachers have about this coming back, if we are coming back in person, if we're like, just, I think there's a lot of anxiety in general. And if you all have thoughts about how to kind of thoughtfully and I don't know, do a good job managing that.
I like to give the students surveys. I do that anyway, but I think, you know, what are you worried about with the class? What are you looking forward to? Just get as much information as possible. I've gotten a lot of valuable information about that. What do you like? You know, who was your favorite teacher? Why did you like that teacher? Think of a teacher you didn't like. What was it about that person? So I think the more information you can get, the better. It also builds trust right away because the students know that you're looking out for them. You know, and I also think in terms of COVID and being in the classroom, you could fall back on what your school is doing. But I think one thing teachers and adults like to do is assure students they're 100% safe, which we just can't do regardless. So, you know, I would be careful about that because you can't guarantee their safety, but you can let them know what you're doing to keep everybody safe and what the district has in mind. And I think that relationship building at the beginning in terms of listening to them is important. And I also think structure. A lot of times with trauma-informed teaching, we think about flexibility, the flexibility of deadlines. That's really important. But like, for instance, I actually had to set bells on my phone after a couple months because I just realized that without structure, I was having trouble like existing in time. And I think creating procedures and structure, that gives kids a lot of comfort as well. So I think establishing that, you know, community, and which includes relationship building and structure, can be helpful. And I just really like surveys early on.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think those are great strategies as well. I tend to I keep up with current events a lot, and like I realize this is also easy for me because I'm not much older than many of my students. So I also try to keep up with current events that they're more interested as well, which is harder. And I've learned a lot more about media in the past few years. but also just like, I find like blunt transparency works really well also, just like, especially when things are bad. No one wants a teacher trying to pretend that things aren't bad. It's just like, no, things are bad. Like, you guys understand that. I'm not going to treat you like you're dumb, and you don't, because you absolutely do, especially if you're a teenager or older. Like, you get it. And I think also trying to encourage your students to connect with what's happening in their own way can be really, really useful. And like, I'm even just trying to think about strategies with this. So in the middle of like the Iraq war getting really, really bad, I was in middle school, and my reading teacher at the time, she would like, her assignment was just like, for us, she was just like, find a local political cartoon, a national one, an international one. She's like, you can do whatever you want with it. You can like find it online, like if you want. She's like, just bring them back, present them to class, tell me about it, so that like I know you're keeping up to date with what's happening in the world, and like you're being able to like give me a reading report on like also what's happening in the world. So I think there are definitely strategies sort of that nature to connect things with what's going on, to even just like, if things are weighing on your students or like they want to talk about them, just like do your work as a classicist to be like, oh crap, yeah, like are there things like I could connect to them for this, and like even ask them about things too, I think is like really important. And asking their opinions about not only what's happening, but like if they think it connects to other things, I think is like really important, because I think that's how I started having some of those first like connecting with material, was sort of debating in classes about like whether we really felt like it did actually sort of resonate with things we were going through in our own contemporary. And I think if you can sort of help encourage those links and connections, that will be a good way to sort of still help them be engaged with the material and being able to do these things without feeling too overwhelmed, hopefully.
Great, thank you. We are at time. I know Suzanne had a question, and she had a comment in the chat earlier. If Danny and Vanessa, you have time for one more question, but also everyone, including both of our speakers, should feel free to say they have to get out of here, that we are at time, and this is what folks were told in terms of time. Danny, Vanessa, what are your thoughts?
I'm good.
You got one more? Okay.
Yeah, I can do one more, then I could scram.
Okay, excellent. And so Suzanne, take it away.
Hello, sorry, there's some noise in the background here. My question that I struggle with quite a bit and think about quite a bit is this difference between the sense of danger, like actual danger, right? Well, if there is actual danger, versus the feeling of threat, versus, you know, what is a challenge? Like, so I try to analogize, you know, what we're doing in the classroom. It's kind of like weightlifting. You don't go straight to the 100-pound weight. I'm still not there, but you start with like 5 pounds, then 8, then 10, you know, and how much to challenge students, you know, because it's uncomfortable to not know things or to feel like you don't know things, right? And so, you know, how much, like how to balance the fact that learning is going to give people this feeling of a little bit of anxiety if they don't know something or can't get something as fast as they think they should get it often, not so much what I think they should do, but more that they put a lot of pressure on themselves, partly because of the environment of school that they grew up in, right? Or even their home life or whatever. So, you know, just how, like, have you encountered, or do you have strategies for, you know, trying to like fine tune that, like, okay, we, you know, things are going to challenge you, but if you feel like, I don't want you to shut down, like, you know, because something, it's not, you know, it may start to feel a little threatening to your view of the world, but that's actually maybe where we want to go. But I want you to understand that you're not in actual danger, right? So I want you to, you know, if you've always been in white-centric religious environments that are, you know, like I might want to challenge that worldview that maybe there are other points of view in the world. But that may feel threatening because you have to change what you've grown up with, right? So I want to do that, but I don't want you to feel like you're in actual danger where you would shut down or, you know, be triggered in a way that's a cascade trigger as opposed to just like you know. So anyway, that's my question.
I mean, I usually lead really early on with classics being used for white supremacy and let them know the Klan recruits in our town and AIM recruits in our town, and their swastikas sometimes spray painted on buildings. I mean, this is something in our town. So I don't factor in their reaction to reality, because also prioritizing feelings of people who are used to being coddled is not going to do right by my classroom as a whole. So I don't worry about that. I mean, but I also don't present things in an alarmist way. It's very matter of fact. Here's some things about what you're about to study. And then, you know, obviously with the foundation myth, Remus and Romulus, that comes in very early too. And that involves some, you know, sexual violence, and I just name it because these are things that they've encountered before. You know, they see it on the news. Many students have been sexually harassed or know somebody who's been sexually assaulted. So I think being direct and honest and presenting it in a matter-of-fact way really destigmatizes it. I think sometimes people think, oh, you know, this is going to be this big, huge conversation. I've not had a single parent phone call about anything I've brought up in the room, and I bring up most of the things that, you know, if you know me on Twitter or read my article in AJP, these are things I talk about with my students, and some are extremely conservative. So I think bringing it up in a matter-of-fact way destigmatizes it, because really it should be something kids are comfortable talking about in a authentic way, if that makes sense.
Do you teach teenagers? Or
Maybe.
Yeah, or undergrads?
Well, they are teenagers when I get them, but yeah, they're like, you know, 18. Like I do a lot of first year seminar, and so, you know, for example, one topic that has been a challenge for them is pederasty, and I do a whole hour or sometimes more on that, and they're like, but how's this not like homosexuality? How's this? I mean, you could just see them like trying to struggle with this. And I'm like, well, let's keep talking about it. Let's see how it's showing up in the material. Let's, you know, and frankly, I grew up in an environment where, you know, it was highly stigmatized, right? A heavily Catholic environment. And so like I've had to learn how to talk about this sort of thing in a matter-of-fact way as well, and to show them that you can, and to tell them that, yeah, that this, I still get a little tightness when I talk about this, because it's not something I was ever, you know, that I learned how to talk about as a young person. And so it's like, okay, let's walk through this together, but also just show them material. Anyway, so does that, yes, that answer your question? Teenagers, yes, but undergrads.
I think that, yeah, so you get such a like good and important age group, because it's the age group where it's like everyone thinks they're adult, but they're really not, because it's like your early 20s are the hardest years of your life, even if they might be the funnest. But, and also, I mean, their frontal lobes are also still finishing forming. So these ideas, and this is often you're the first like person often that they've like actually are having challenging their indoctrination they've faced their entire life. It's why in this country there is such a like stereotype of just like liberal colleges, you know, like colleges will turn your kids liberal, and it's just like, no, oftentimes colleges are just the first time your kids will meet a diverse group of people and actually have their world beliefs challenged for the first time. So I would like encourage you to, yeah, especially since they are adults at this point, I think that feelings and care are very important in a classroom, and I think that actually in colleges and academia we tend to de-emphasize them too much, because no, we should care incredibly for our students and their emotions, because we're literally like trying to shove information into their brain for reasons that are I don't know why we do it. Why do we want to do it? We need to ask ourselves these things and question it deeper. But at the same time, I think it can also really, really help at that, when you're teaching that age group, to just be very, very matter of fact about things, and to be very not like emotional or alarmist about them, but just in a very like, but of course, like, of course things are this way. Like, well, oh, so you think this? Well, like, well, why do you think this? Let's interrogate these things further. Like, let's go like into it, and like really coming from a point of like, I like to call it like smiling empathy, like with students. It was this tool that I really, really, really had to learn because my first day of teaching Latin in my undergrad, I had like one of my students try to tell me the skin color of every single person around the ancient Mediterranean. It was wild. And I was just like, okay, I need better strategies than just like getting angry in the middle of class. So yeah, that's sort of my, I tend to go for like a very balmy pleasantness and very intense, and like the eyes get more and more bugged out as I like to smile wider and wider. Pleasantness, especially with my students when I'm trying to just be like, what are you talking about? Because also like, man, especially if you're teaching a lot of boys, like teenage boys love being challenged. Why? I don't know, but it's just like, and they like challenging people, and it's just like, and it can be irritating as hell. But also it's like, for the most part, they are there because they want to learn and they want to absorb these things. And it's like, you are kind of blowing their mind with antiquity, because antiquity is weird and strange and does actually challenge many of our own ideas about ourselves, because classics weirdly does have cultural clout and power in this country. So you're really helping lift back the veil for like a lot of them. I think that like, even if you come at it from that perspective to them, that can be helpful, of just being like, hey, like I'm literally helping you guys see some of this like larger stuff, like cut me some slack, like what are we doing? Yeah, I guess I just want to empower you more to just sort of feel what you want to do like in this role, and try to come at it in a way that feels like you're giving the best empathy to your students, but still trying to maintain the space that you want.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Vanessa. In the interest of, respecting everybody's time, I think we need to wrap up now. If folks have follow-up questions or comments, or if you would like to know how to get a hold of Danny or Vanessa, I will share their Twitter handles, and if you want to email them, let me know, and I can put you in contact with them. But yeah, thank you all for coming, for a good conversation, and I will put a channel specifically into the Discord and Slack stuff so that we can continue talking through some of these questions about how to do best by our students, and also by ourselves and our colleagues, and all of that. So we'll keep these conversations going. Thank you all for coming. Thank you again, Vanessa. Danny had to duck out, but thank you again, Vanessa.